Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Data Dispatch. I hope you guys are all having a wonderful day. We're going to be talking about some of the key things that happen in the market, specifically also talking about where Palantir is sitting at right now because it's at a critical support level in the after hours overnight trading session on Robinhood. And this could be due to a reaction from NVIDIA's earnings, which actually came out beating expectations in terms of earnings per share and revenue estimates. We'll be talking about the details. However, we're seeing actually a little bit of a sell-off right now in NVIDIA because their current fiscal guidance was only a tad bit higher than Wall Street expectations. So with this big AI key leader, how is this going to have an impact on Palantir, and what are the articles coming out about Palantir right now? Specifically, I'll give you a little bit of a warning. They're all talking about its valuation. What else would they be talking about if you want to go bearish? Now, anyway, if you are a new or returning viewer, help me hit my Christmas goal, end of the year goal of 20,000 subscribers. We are on our way. I can't thank you guys enough for watching these videos on a daily basis. And of course, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm collecting all the data and dispatching it to you. Now, pop it up on the screen right here. Palantir in the after hours overnight trading session on Robinhood is about down $1.30, sitting at the 60.85. Now, what we've seen and why this is important is because Palantir actually had a market close at 62.12, down about 3 to 4%, including the after hours where it's sitting at right now. But Palantir has had already, in just within the last few days here, some important reversals that have been triggered in terms of support lines at that $60 area. You can see here when Palantir had nearly that 10% dip, it was bought up at the 60 level. You also had this happening yesterday, bought up at the 60 level, and a little bit of activity there today. Now we'll see what happens going into tomorrow's market. Quickly looking over here, we do have trading volume that's down a little bit than what we've seen in the last few days, but we've had a lot of trendiness behind Palantir, so we got to take that with a grain of salt too. But where it sits right now, a lot of puts actually are coming in and actually outpacing the calls right now for end of the week expirations. Not that that means anything, crazy, uncertain in terms of FUD that's coming to the market, fear, but this could be testing the $60 level of support. If this does fail for some reason, if it does, this has been tested a lot. It has been doing well just recently in terms of a micro kind of technical basis. Not a lot of support that was in the 50s. We had a big run up in the 50s. So we could be experiencing more of a pullback if we do see any change in market sentiment in terms of AI stocks. Now, talking about some things that are happening with NVIDIA right now. NVIDIA, they come out here late Wednesday with the earnings call, like I said, coming in with 81 cents per share, correlated with a revenue of 65 billion or 35 billion right here. Now, the actual expectations were 75 cents on 33 billion respectively. However, for the current fiscal quarter, NVIDIA forecasts a revenue of 37.5 billion, edging above the expectations of 37.09 billion. So the fact that it is just slightly above the current period, slightly above the estimates, this is most likely my opinion on the reasoning that we're seeing the stock that is sliding in extended trading. Now, will this actually still continue to capitulate in the market open? I mean, of course, we don't know, but nonetheless, what we've seen is the earnings forecast topping expectations right now. The CEO came out and basically said the age of AI is still in full steam. And one of the big things, regardless that we're seeing here, the demand for Hopper and the anticipation for the Blackwell AI chip is in full production. So nonetheless, they had a good earnings. They had a great earnings report in terms of their actual expectations. And we're seeing a lot of demand that is coming in a quick summary. However, just from the psychology right here, it looks like Wall Street was expecting even more, and this is sometimes this gets a little too greedy in terms of expectations, trying to always ask for more and more and more and more and more of these companies to the point where, hey, they have to be basically priced for perfection. And that's where Palantir is that kind of the culprit right now, because you see some of these articles coming out here. Palantir stock just did something it hasn't done in 2021. Well, Motley Fool is coming out here talking about Palantir seeing a huge demand. Of course, a lot of us would agree with this. We see it in the data, we see it in the numbers, the commercial business, the governmental business continuing to make the headlines. Where Palantir stands right now in terms of incredibly expensive, we've seen this disconnect from valuation, and this is just been in fruition. The reality, what we've seen, Palantir has been trading at incredible prices, and we've seen insider trading that's continued to pile up. We've seen Alex Karp that is continuing to sell shares. No fault to them. I mean, they're profit taking advantage of this incredibly high stock price, and with it up nearly over 200% year to date. 280% right here this year, Palantir is doing very well. Now, the last time that Palantir was at its all-time high peaks was at 2021, and the stock didn't do well 2 years later. Talking about here, it came down 80%. I think Palantir is at a completely different point. So I don't know if it's directly, I don't know if it's fair to compare it directly to 2021 because it is at a completely different point in terms of AIP, profitability, expansion into enterprise, and continuing to build in terms of trustworthiness and credibility with the governmental contracts. Palantir is at a whole different level, I think, compared to where it was 2021. So tumbling down here, I don't right now in the short term think we're going to see that much of a correction, even though if we do have some, I would not be surprised. Now, this brings up right here, talking about reality. A few companies have ever traded for 50 times the sales. That is also an important acknowledgement in terms of downside risk potential here. That has been a winning investment, and this level of expectation right here is they're saying only coming from companies that are doubling or tripling their revenue per year that can justify this type of growth in terms of 50 times its sales. And they're talking about how Palantir's revenue is only in the 30% range. Now, a lot of these articles are always talking about its valuation. It's its biggest criticism. But what we've seen is proof in the pudding. Yes, we do know at some point there's probably going to be a little bit of a pullback. When is that going to happen? Who knows? Nobody knows. And sometimes you guys in the comments, or not all of you guys, but some people are like, hey, you talk about Palantir stock going up and going down. That's because nobody knows where it's going to go in the short term. But what we can do is make some educated guesses. And I think in the short term, the risk for the downside potential is higher in my prediction than the risk or than the actual benefit for upside potential in terms of entering positions. Now, what we do see in terms of that risk for downside potential, the reason why it's high is because I think more investors in terms of a psychology basis are starting to realize the valuation is pretty out of the loop in terms of the premium that is paying up much, has to be paid for the stock, correlated to the actual revenue growth that Palantir is bringing in. You even see Seeking Alpha talking about all the benefits. However, the market cap of 140 billion, the 52 times its sales, the 300x its net income is making it unsustainably overvalued. And that's not necessarily a bad thing because, hey, Black Friday is coming up. If Palantir does come down a decent bit, then that is just going to be more buying opportunities for people that are still bullish in the long term. I mean, if you're bullish and within the next 5 to 10 years, think of Palantir is at $200 to $300 a share, even more. We don't know where it's going to go. Nobody does. Then if $60 right now, that could look relatively cheap. It's all about perspective. Or if you think Palantir is going down to the low 10s like RBC Capital, which I don't know if we'll see our Palantir go all the way down then. But nonetheless, you're going to see all these different opinions out there. And that's why it's always important to really do your own due diligence. But not a lot of big news from Palantir, just some bearish articles here talking about its valuation. I do understand that. However, I think the disconnect is there. In the short term, I think the risk for downside potential is higher than the benefit of an increase in market cap. And we'll see what happens with NVIDIA if that does have a weight on it. Right now, it seems like it does, but that's also overnight trading, so not a ton of reliance compared to the volume that's going to be coming in terms of market open. We also have a big stock today that plummets. Target taking a tumble. I was actually surprised here to see that Target lost more than a fifth of its value. Holy Toledo, after the retailer gave a forecast for the holiday shopping season. Not the best time to give a bad forecast for the shopping season. Target tumbled 21.4% following this report, showing weaker profit and revenue for the latest quarter than analysts have actually expected. The retailer also gave a forecast for profit in the upcoming holiday season that was below analyst estimates. So the first thing here was that weaker profit and revenue for the last quarter, and the forecast for holiday season is also below estimates. This is interesting because right now Target's performance is actually in contrast to Walmart, which just recently reported another quarter of stellar sales. Now, Walmarts typically are not my place to shop. We see Target is typically a much more, I want to say bougie, but nonetheless, it's interesting to see that both of these big retail companies are actually in contrast of each other. And this does kind of give us some uncertainty about what's actually happening in terms of consumer spending. We'll wait till the next report comes out. But with that, we see Target and Walmart earnings are very interesting because what Associated Press here is basically they typically see a waterfall type effect. And this basically just means if the economy begins to struggle, we see trading down from stores across the board, not this contrast type of report, especially from some of the biggest retailers here. So Target, one of the biggest lures in the S&P 500. You also had Dollar General and Dollar Trees coming down about 4% and 2% respectively. So what is your opinion on all this? What do you think is happening in Palantir? Do you think it's going to be able to hold that $60 level of support, or do you think it's going to fall, or do you think that dip's going to be bought? What's your opinion on NVIDIA trading? And what about Target versus Walmart? Who wins there? Peace out. Take care. I'll catch you guys tomorrow.